Thank you for listening to my mom's story.
Tonight,
I need you to listen closely because the latest news about my mom is absolutely devastating.
The police are finally realizing that my mom
might not have vanished the way her husband Brian claimed that night in the Bahamas.
an experienced investigator who worked major missing cases, tells me Brian's story makes absolutely no sense.
Then, the Coast Guard suddenly seized their sailboat,
Wrapped it in crime scene tape and began carrying out evidence bags.
Now we are left with one terrifying question.
If my mom didn't drown the way Brian says,
then what actually happened to her that night?
my mom was a 55-year-old woman from Michigan
Who spent years sailing the open ocean with her husband Brian on their boat, Soulmate.
Online, they looked like the perfect couple.
They shared smiling photos,
Sailing videos, gorgeous ocean sunsets, and what looked like a beautiful life together.
but behind those pictures,
We are now trying to figure out if something much darker was happening out there.
According to Brian, they were returning to their sailboat in rough weather when my mom supposedly fell from a small dinghy into the dark water. He claims she vanished into the night, swept away before he could do anything. He told people he screamed her name,
Threw her a cushion and desperately searched the black water. But this is where his story falls apart.
The police became suspicious the moment they heard his timeline.
because instead of begging for help to find my mom, questions grew about what he was actually doing after my mom disappeared.
Even worse,
Detectives now believe this tragic ocean accident was staged to cover up something else entirely. Then came the news that shattered us.
The Coast Guard intercepted Soulmate near Florida, seizing my mom's boat for a criminal investigation. They wrapped crime scene tape all over her boat, while agents searched below deck for hours.
they carried evidence bags off her boat.
As federal agents searched every corner of the sailboat my mom called home.
Just stop and really think about this.
If this was just a tragic accident, why are they treating my mom's boat like a crime scene? Why take away evidence bags? What did they find inside her home?
And why are they looking for witnesses who saw another mysterious boat near Soulmate right before my mom disappeared? I want to walk you through the timeline,
His strange behavior and the dark truth about Brian.
And the chilling evidence that makes me wonder if my mom.
I knew my mom's disappearance was never an accident. The deeper investigators looked into Brian's side of the story, the stranger it became. Brian claimed my mom fell from their small dinghy into rough water near the Bahamas late at night. He said the darkness, the wind, and the waves separated them in seconds.
But one question started bothering everyone almost immediately.
Why did his timeline feel so wrong?
According to reports, my mom vanished around 7:30 that evening.
But Brian did not reach shore until nearly 8 hours later.
8 hours alone on the water, after my mother supposedly vanished into the dark ocean.
And during those critical hours, investigators say there was no distress call, no real panic, and absolutely no evidence of the kind of desperate behavior anyone would expect from a husband trying to save my mother.
Just think about how terrifying that actually is.
My mother disappears into pitch-black ocean water at night. And somehow, hours pass before he even alerts the authorities.
That detail alone made me stop trusting his story completely.
Then, another deeply disturbing detail surfaced. Brian later admitted that neither of them wore life jackets that night.
Not even in rough weather out on the dark water.
For me, and everyone following this, that excuse made no sense.
My mom's friends always described them as experienced sailors.
So why would two smart, experienced people ignore basic safety out there?
But things became even more disturbing.
When I finally decided to publicly question Brian's version of events,
I exposed hidden behavior from the past that painted a much darker picture
Behind their perfect social media lives.
suddenly, those smiling sailing videos of them didn't feel comforting.
They felt terrifying.
And while all of this was happening, investigators were still finding absolutely nothing in that vast ocean.
No body, no life jacket, no personal belongings, nothing at all connected to my mom.
That eerie silence from the water changed our entire search.
Because now we were no longer just asking where my mother had vanished.
Investigators were starting to ask what happened right before she ever vanished.
Then came another revelation that made things feel even darker. A veteran investigator reviewing Brian's statements reportedly found massive holes in his version of events.
Not minor mistakes, serious warning signs.
And according to sources close to the case,
What federal agents later discovered aboard the Soulmate might become the crucial evidence we need.
When federal investigators officially seized the Soulmate,
This stopped feeling like a tragic accident and felt like something far more sinister. The sailboat my mother and Brian once lived on was
suddenly wrapped in crime scene tape as agents searched the cabin for hours.
Witnesses reported seeing evidence bags carried right off the deck.
and that single moment changed how everyone saw him overnight.
Because we all immediately started asking the same horrifying question.
What exactly were investigators expecting to find inside my mom's sailboat? And then another chilling detail surfaced.
Reports revealed the Soulmate was moving toward Florida
When authorities intercepted it near the coast.
But during that trip, the boat's GPS tracking reportedly stopped transmitting. That detail sent shockwaves through the entire case.
My missing mother, an active investigation.
Her boat tied to the disappearance, and suddenly the tracking goes dark. Now, stop and think about what that really means.
Investigators were already questioning Brian's story before this happened.
But once the GPS issue surfaced,
Everyone began wondering if someone was trying to hide where they took her boat. Even I publicly questioned
Why strange men were suddenly operating the boat while my mom was still missing.
At the same time, police also started searching for another mystery boat that had reportedly been near.
the Soulmate, on the night my mother vanished.
Investigators believe the people on that boat may have seen or heard something crucial.
That revelation terrified everyone following the case.
Because it suggested investigators believed witnesses were closer to the truth than Brian's original story. And then came the detail that pushed everything into an even darker place.
Old reports of tension inside their marriage started resurfacing.
Allegations of controlling behavior and anger issues.
Claims that deeply disturbed everyone watching our story online.
Suddenly,
The picture of them happily sailing through paradise didn't match what police were uncovering behind the scenes.
but the most painful part is this. Despite massive searches in the water, my mother has still never been found.
No proof she drowned, no evidence she was carried away by currents.
Nothing.
And that silence is why investigators now focus on one terrifying possibility.
What if the truth about my mother never started in the ocean at all?
Right now, the most terrifying part of my mom's case isn't what police have revealed.
It is what they haven't revealed yet.
Because even after all the interviews, all the searches,
And all the statements, one fact still hangs over this entire investigation.
Like a shadow.
my mom is still missing.
And investigators are focused far less on the ocean now than on the people on the boat during her final night. That shift tells me everything. An experienced investigator looked at Brian's statements and publicly said he doesn't believe my mom ended up in the water the way Brian described,
Not because of rumors or online theories,
but because of serious problems found inside Brian's own version of events.
Once federal agents seized the Soulmate, my mom's boat,
And began searching it like a crime scene.
everything about my mom's case felt completely different.
because everyone watching this started realizing the same thing.
This might not be a simple disappearance anymore.
It could be a homicide investigation hiding inside a missing person case.
Through all this, my stepfather Brian denies any wrongdoing. He hasn't been charged with a crime, but the questions around him keep growing darker.
Why did his timeline raise so many red flags?
Why did investigators remove evidence from my mom's boat? Why was another nearby sailboat suddenly so important to agents?
And why has absolutely no physical trace
Of my mother ever surfaced from the water?
That silence is impossible for me to ignore now.
But perhaps the most heartbreaking part of all this is me.
Publicly speaking out while still searching for answers about my mother.
I live with this crushing uncertainty every single day.
No goodbye, no truth, no final answers. Just endless questions for the last person who saw my mother alive.
And that is exactly why my mother's story continues to grip America.
Because somewhere behind his ocean story, behind the interviews, and behind his disappearing timeline,
We believe there is still a hidden truth investigators are slowly
uncovering piece by piece. For me, the mystery remains terrifyingly simple. What really happened to my mother on that boat in the Bahamas?
And if investigators are right to doubt his original story,
Then where is my mother now?